Hi everyone, I finally was able to set up my camera and recording equipment. Welcome to my home office. This is where I do most of my work for Moody's. Space Needle is roughly over there, so you know where we are. We're in self-quarantine. I hope you are as well, so we can quickly get through this and hopefully carry on with our lives as intended. Now going forward, instead of giving you readings mostly, I will shoot these very quick videos which are me explaining things more or less like I would in class. It's a little bit shorter because we can't really do Q&A. These will be accompanied by practice problems. And then, of course, I will at least once per week hold a Zoom check-in so you can talk to me if you have any questions or concerns along those lines. Now, where we left off before all of this started was the ISLM model. And the ISLM model, as you know, is a model of the economy in the short run, which by and large means we are excluding the supply side. We're basically ignoring that. And the next natural step then is to think about the question how the supply side responds to changes in the business cycle, how it itself can affect the business cycle. And to the degree I already had you read up a little bit on the labor market, I hope there were no significant questions to that. I will review that a little bit. The reason why the labor market matters in the context of the supply side discussion is that, of course, labor is an important input into everything we make. So firms go to labor markets, and if the business cycle is on the upswing, right, if they're doing really well, we'll produce more. That means they will have to hire more. And then on the downswing, if the economy is seeing a recession, they will hire less. And so that's the reason why we start with the labor market. There are other input factor markets that matter, of course. Resources matter, capital matters. We can sort of abstract a little bit from that from now, but we'll come back to it at a later point. So next move then in terms of material is chapter 8 in the book, which is the aggregate supply, aggregate demand model. You've seen a version of this already in your principles classes. The only thing we're going to do here is we're basically going to corroborate that a little bit. So instead of just hand waving and say, what is this sort of supply curve that slopes upward? This is demand curve that sort of slopes downward. We're going to formalize this a little bit. Aggregate supply, as I said, will largely depend on the labor market. Aggregate demand is really just ISLM in a nutshell. There's nothing much more to that. Once we have that, then we can talk about how economists at least conceptually think about the economy at large. Of course, as you know, we're going through this big event right now that has economic consequences. Economists create forecasts what that will, for instance, entail. This is an example here. This is my own employer, I should say that. What we are predicting for the US now that this corona shutdown has occurred is growth of -2% in 2020. Actually, in the second quarter, we're predicting something like -20. That's not the most pessimistic. The most pessimistic I've seen was Morgan Stanley. They're predicting about -30% in the second quarter. But we are now at a point where we're predicting recession. And much of this is actually what we call a supply side shock. The reason for this being that, well, if 25% of the economy, the service sector and trade sector especially shut down, that has consequences for how much is actually produced as a supply side sort of effect. As it turns out, that also has demand side effects. And then the question is, what can we do about it? So is what the Fed did an appropriate measure, for instance? Is what Congress did, this $2 trillion stimulus bill, a good concept, right? And these are the sort of things we'll discuss. For that, we'll do the theory first, and then we'll talk about application. And with that, I will conclude this first video.